You may be busy doing something while you listen to this podcast, but you're never too busy to eat healthy if you eat Vite Ramen. This podcast is sponsored by Vite Ramen. Show support for a sponsor that supports Moore's Law is Dead at the link in the description, and if you do, make sure you use offer code BROKENSILICON. And you can also support Moore's Law is Dead if you need Windows keys or software at cdkeyoffer.com. If you go there, also use the code BROKENSILICON for 25% off Windows keys or die shrink for 3% off everything else on the website. All right, now let's get on with the show. Welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Raphael Tom, and I am joined today by my co-host,
Rembrandt Dan.
That works. That's another SoC we'll be discussing. Surprisingly, as that was one of the main topics really even worth talking about on our channel that was given an overview at the Hot Chips event, which is part of the first story. How you doing, Dan?
Pretty good, I suppose. You?
I'm fine. You know, it's we're recording this episode, of course, late because we wanted, what are we gonna not wait for the AMD Zen 4 reveal before recording the next Broken Silicon? And honestly, that usually annoys me, but I gotta hand it to AMD. Thank you for doing this at like 7 p.m. Eastern time instead of like 9 p.m. or something. Like, at least for US viewers like me, it's been nice to not have to watch something at 2 a.m. or whatever.
Yeah, it's
and it's nice that it's on
fun.
Monday, right, instead of like Thursday.
It's always fun when they base their stuff in like Taiwanese time or something like that, and it's just that like everything is at like 3 a.m. or something.
Yeah, and again, like I cut you off there to say it, like, and it's also annoying when they do that on Thursday because, granted, I don't think AMD or any of these companies should really care at all about what makes life easy for us. They have their own stuff to worry about, but it's like, oh my God, like when that happens, we just have to make these decisions. Like, so what, are we going to delay the episode till Friday instead of Tuesday? And usually lately what we've done is just record it a little early and release it a day early so it doesn't feel inept if we're not talking about a big reveal on a Thursday. But AMD, Monday afternoon, early evening, we approve. Speaking of someone who's not at AMD, Jensen Wang writes in, just like you guys can if you support us on Patreon, and he says, I still have more spatulas than you, Tom. Please discuss. Which, for those who missed the last news episode of Broken Silicon, I now, of course, have a jar of spatulas behind me.
With a DG1 in it?
Yeah, with a unconfirmed Intel graphics card in it, Dan. That there's proof Intel's made something though, right there next to those spatulas. But yeah, I would never try to compete with Jensen's spatula game. It seems like ridiculous.
He has enough to cover up a 3090. Like, nobody can have that many spatulas.
Absolutely. I have like a small Intel graphics card there. I couldn't even hope to cover up my 3090 with my spatulas. Only Jensen can do that, of course. Glacier Island writes in, and he says, why do you refer to yourself in the third person when reading your write-up/summaries of content on Broken Silicon? Well, I'll admit that I feel weird sometimes when I do it, Glacier, but I don't always do it. It's only when I decide to write a write-up from the third person perspective because I'm reading other stories from a third person perspective. And if I have like a big, flowery, or some might negatively call it indulgent write-up about something like I call it flowery, you can call it egotistical and annoying, but whatever. From my perspective, it's sometimes flowery, I would hope. Write-up, it's like if it's going to be several paragraphs, going over with a bit of prose, something I've discussed in a video or leaked, I want to read it or write it, and then read it the same way I would read some leak on WCCF Tech or something. That's the whole idea. Now, if there's just a small thing and I don't have a write-up, that's why it's never in, or I don't think it's almost ever written in third person because it's like, hey, this happened, and then we
Yeah.
talk. But if I have a big write up, it feels weirder to me to write it. Hey guys, last week I did this. It feels weirder when I'm reading all these other stories in a different way. I don't know. That's just how I do it, Glacier. But I don't always do it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get to the first story. So we're going to go through one story and then maybe a reader mail and then stop and then watch the AMD Zen 4 reveal. And then we'll come back having been bestowed with knowledge from Raphael. All right. Anyways, story number 1. Takeaways from Hot Chips 34. All right. Here we go. This is just my general summary write-up of what I thought gamers should pay attention to from the Hot Chips presentation this year, which of course we cover every year. This writer will be honest. Hot Chips 34 was much more boring than the previous 2 years' conferences covered by Moore's Law's Dead, at least from a purely gaming hardware perspective. There were no RDNA deep dives, no Threadripper reveals, and no Xbox Series X architecture overviews. But there was some stuff worth mentioning. In summary, Nvidia detailed their Orin family of self-driving SoCs. They actually support ray tracing, and their design is more so based on GA100, not compute-based GA cards that are used for all of the RTX 3000 series desktop graphics cards. Now, this is important because Orin's graphics card has 50% more L1 and 3.5 times the L2 cache per SM compared to GA102. And it also has supposedly enhanced tensor cores over other Ampere. This is all notable because so far all leaks about Orin generally line up with what Moore's Law did was told about a switch to APU being sent to developers early 2022. I leaked this last summer for a late 2022 or early 2023 launch. This does not seem like a standard Ampere, and that might explain why some developers were referring to it as Lovelace. Though frankly, I still kind of think some of them were just confused. But anyways, it's worth mentioning that despite using LPDDR5, Orin does have much more cache per SM than desktop gaming Ampere, which will give it more performance per SM despite having less bandwidth. And it should therefore bring better than a PS4's level of performance and likely better than a Steam Deck's level of performance to a Nintendo handheld console within a year, although how much better massively depends on the version of Orin they select, as the basis for that is undoubtedly a semi-custom variant that will have changes from Orin. So that's the write-up for Orin. I guess let's go step by step here. Do you have any thoughts on Orin? I sent you the presentations. It's fine if you don't, honestly.
I mean, not too much. Like, yeah, that looks like something that could go into a Switch 2, I suppose, or a Switch predecessor. It still feels potentially a little weaker than what I would like. Well, I guess it might compare to.
It depends on what variant they go with. My suspicion is it will be the mostly 10 to 25 watt variant as the basis, which has 1024 CUDA cores. Although again, with more cache per SM than desktop Ampere, and instead of the 2048 one that goes up to 60 watts or something. Mm-hmm. The thing I discussed this with Carbon Cry, which is a whole 1.5 hour die shrink going over hot chip stuff for supporters on Patreon. That the thing that he thought might be the most disappointing thing about Orin is if they went with like 4 cores instead of like 8 or 12, which we'll see. My suspicion is they'll actually go with 8, but that's a suspicion, and it could be some hope in there.
Listen, if they went with 4 cores this day and age, that would just.
It'd still be better than the PS4 CPU, I'm sure.
That's true, but the PS, that's not really saying much. It's a 9-year-old console at this point. I mean, I don't know. I would hope that that Orin is what the Switch is, at a minimum, like that like you say, the 8-core. Although having full Orin wouldn't be wouldn't be some ridiculous level of power even for Nintendo, I feel like, but.
Well, having full Orin, though, could give you like GTX 3050 laptop performance.
Yeah, I guess it might be more than I would expect.
And that would be what, then, like 1650 Ti or 1650 laptop performance, basically, somewhere around there, depending. Because, again, it's up for debate which version of the 3050, which version of the 1650. Sometimes they're the same performance.
Yeah, that's true. I just don't really think that's much to write home about at this point. And it would be nice if Nintendo released a console that was like in the same ballpark of performance as their competitors,
Yeah. I mean, This is something Carbon Cry said, though, that stuck with me in that episode. Again, you should get access to on our Patreon, where he goes, at the end of the day, I just think that Nintendo builds a console to what they want. And if people want to put a game on it, the developers will make do.
Oh yeah, I know. That's clearly what their model is, and it's clearly working. So it's just at a certain point, I think will get hard to develop for games unless they just keep saying, "Well, this is our own ecosystem."
Right. Well, moving on to the rest of the lineup. Also, AMD showed off Rembrandt and detailed how there were over 50 new or enhanced features for optimized efficiency in the Zen 3 Plus APU. It should not be underestimated how far ahead AMD is in laptop efficiency right now. Raptor Lake Mobile will struggle to beat Rembrandt in efficiency, let alone Phoenix, is what we discussed. I assume you don't have much to say over that. It really is interesting how many little tweaks are in Zen 3 Plus, right, for efficiency. And then really the most important thing of the show, Intel showed off architecture details for Meteor Lake and Arrow Lake. There are unsurprisingly many energy saving features in Meteor Lake, including 3D capacitors that should make it very efficient at certain tasks relative to current gen mobile SoCs, including AMD's current ones. And that Intel sees Meteor Lake as a platform that can be upgraded with new tiles, and this is in quotes, as nodes become available. And this directly hints at Intel swapping in new CPU or GPU AI tiles for either an upgraded family of Meteor Lake products before all of Arrow Lake is ready, or perhaps to swap in a higher core count tile, the desktop version of Meteor Lake. And this would allow them to have more bridge families, which I thought that was really interesting that they distinctly said that, though. That, let's say a Battle Mage graphics tile is ready before Lion Cove is ready. Well, we can maybe launch a node shrink version of Meteor Lake with Battle Mage and call it a new generation of CPUs without having to wait for everything else to be ready. If there's, I don't know, hypothetically a bug in some Intel hardware they're working on that could delay a product for an entire year. Not that would ever happen.
Well, at least that's not happening right now. So,
but yeah, did you have any thoughts about the Intel part of the Hot Chips presentation?
Seeing them moving towards the the disaggregated architectures is interesting, and I think that's maybe suggests that Meteor Lake might be another might be the true big catch-up moment that we originally thought Alder Lake was, but maybe
Alder Lake did catch up, but it caught up a year after AMD already had a generation out, and Raptor Lake isn't another Alder Lake moment, whereas Zen 4 is at least as big of a deal as Raptor Lake. It seems like we're expecting to confirm after this part of the recording. Before we get to that, let's do one reader mail here. Beefish36 writes in, he says, "Hi, Tom and Dan. I had a comment and question for your discussion with Carbon Cry from the die shrink you just recorded, where you brought up Mendocino. That's of course, everyone listening, the 4-core, 8-thread Zen 2, like 100 millimeter squared APU that has, I think, just was 2 CUs or so. Yeah, 2 RDNA 2 CUs. He says Asus had a version of the Tough-F15 with a quad core, and the CPU was weak enough that it really held back GPU performance. It was also way too expensive for what it was, in my opinion. He says, I wonder if rather they would start and reverse engineer a price point based on a certain given level of hardware, kind of like how we build a desktop. He says, I really think the sub $1,000 laptop market is underserved, and not everyone wants or needs a thin and light. A tiny sub 50 watt GPU, even on an advanced node, should be dirt cheap and should give decent 1080p performance, even with 4 gigs of RAM. So I think, right, I'm not reading this wrong, Dan. He's like, why don't they work backwards and just target a price point with perfect price performance, right? That's what he's basically asking.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, my answer is that's how we wish things worked. And it is sometimes, again, I bring this up my NV15 right now. They did min-max the CPU. They said you don't need more than 6 cores and 12 threads. And in fact, if we spend an extra $10 on cooling, it will outperform 8 cores in our competitors. But I don't know if that outsold their competitors, because most competitors, what they do is they look for a specific set of boxes that they can check at a price point, and then that's what they do, because they're assuming most people shop for stickers, not for literally what the final performance is of the entire combo. And so they just don't build how enthusiasts do.
I guess I just don't know what the average consumer is looking at when they buy a laptop, because a lot of the time, if we're being honest, if you ask most people, what's in your laptop, what they'll tell you is, I have an i7 or an i9 or something and not really even know what that means half the time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like I spent $1,000 and the thing that they advertise is I don't capacity, RAM, and CPU. And then after that, people that do gaming will pay attention to what the GPU is. But a lot of people don't really look at the GPU from my experience.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's really nothing that can be done about it that much. I would just add the caveats again. 3 caveats, Bfish. Number 1, sometimes companies do reverse engineer to a maximizing a price performance. They don't usually, in my opinion, but they do sometimes.
Yeah.
Number 2, they are kind of doing it though all the time. It's just they're min-maxing advertising per price. Like, what can they advertise at a given price point? And then number 3, the reason they're doing that is because that's what people buy. So if we want these companies to sell something different, we need to buy different products, and they will. You know.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the end of the opening recording for the show. We're gonna go watch the reveal of Zen 4 and get back to you guys. Yeah, so I guess it's time to talk about AMD in story number 2. AMD Zen 4 revealed 13% higher IPC, up to 29% higher single threading, and 30 to 50% higher multi-threading performance confirmed. Right up until the reveal, there were conflicting rumors swirling about pricing, performance, and launch dates regarding AMD's Raphael launch. But now the dust is settled. Zen 4 is officially revealed by AMD, and they don't seem to be sandbagging anymore. It will have 13% higher IPC. I'm repetitive to the title, but I'm going to keep going. It will have 13% higher IPC, which is just below the worst case IPC scenarios we actually originally leaked in Moore's Law is Dead. Up to 29% higher single threading, which is within the 28 to 37% that I leaked months ago as well. And the multi-threading doesn't seem to disappoint either, within the likely above 37% range also leaked. Then AMD also confirmed pricing. The 7950X 16 core is $699, coming in $100 cheaper than the 5950X from Zen 3 and the $750 price point from the 3950X from Zen 2, the processor I still own to this day. Then the 7900X will come in with 12 cores at $549, the same price as what it was, the equivalent was priced with Zen 3. And the 7700X will be priced at $399, $100 more than the Zen 3 5700X, but $50 less than the 5800X. Remember, the 5700X was basically a price drop for the 5800X, honestly, a year after it came out. And then the 7600X comes in with 6 cores and 12 threads at $299, same price as what the 6-core was with Zen 3. And all these are launching September 27th with X670 and X670 Extreme motherboards, just like Moore's Law said, also leaked a week ago. And then we have just a bunch of other stuff here. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. And AMD showed off RDNA 3 and made everyone for 5 seconds think they were revealing Bloodborne for PC if you watch the presentation.
At least us. I mean, I've seen that game before, but it's like it's very much going after the style of Bloodborne to an extent. And every time
the game
I see it,
they showed running on RDNA 3.
Yeah, it's like every time I see it, Bloodborne? Nope.
Nope. Still no Bloodborne remaster. Still no Metal Gear Solid remake confirmed. Totally coming TM. But yeah, I'm trying to think of what else there is here. I have a bunch of little things to go over. Honestly, I don't think we really need to talk about the RDNA 3 teaser at the end. They already told us it was bringing above a 50% performance per watt increase. They've literally told us that already.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of the reveal, Dan? Do we know everything about Zen 4? I mean, let me just ask you this. Better or worse than you were expecting to be revealed today?
I mean, if I hadn't been keeping track of leaks and stuff, it probably better. But, about what I was expecting at this point, honestly, I mean, that's not to say it's a bad thing. This is a great performance uplift and one of the best. I mean, am I misremembering? This is one of the best in the entire history of Zen, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's better than Zen to Zen Plus. Maybe arguably not as good as Zen to Zen 2, because Zen 2 brought a slight clock speed bump over Zen Plus to my memory. Pretty slight, though. But it also brought a similar IPC increase to what we're seeing now. Maybe slightly better or more consistent than what we're seeing now, but pretty similar. But this brings a much higher clock speed increase than, Zen Plus to Zen 2. So overall, to me, it's I feel pretty vindicated here that what I've been saying, it is not a Zen 2 moment, but it is bigger than a Zen 3 moment. That is really how I would describe it. And I've got a lot of random little notes here because, we didn't have time to take reader mails in, but I was able to watch the Discord while we were watching this. And I saw some pretty fascinating mental gymnastics by AMD haters on how this is somehow bad. Even though, as I saw some people pointing out on Twitter, this is the biggest single threading performance increase AMD has brought since Zen 1 over pile driver. So I don't know what the heck you're complaining about, guys, if you are complaining.
And I understand there's not some miraculous IPC boost, but I mean, still 13% isn't a bad IPC boost. It's pretty good still, but I don't know. When we're talking about like 30% higher single threading performance and like up to 50% higher multi-threading, honestly, isn't that the number people actually care about most of the time? Unless we're talking about like potential laptop things down the line that might not boost this high, but it's still a high increase in performance, and I'm guessing it's still going to boost higher than what previous laptop CPUs boosted to. So I don't know. I don't know what the negative takeaway from this is. I guess you could have been hoping for more price cuts from the from previous generations, but that's it. The fact that we got one, I think, is good, and I think spells that AMD thinks that there's at least some competition with Intel at this point.
You're saying that the 7950X is $100 cheaper than the 5950X.
Yeah, that one. So they decreased the price of their top CPU. Nothing else decreased really, but I think that's good.
Yeah, and I think so. I want to get ahead of something else here too. And hey, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I imagine there's a lot of people who are going to look at this pricing and go, "Oh, they're not, being completely stupid, but still they're going to get clobbered by Intel now because the 7700X isn't the rumored $300 a lot of people were hoping it would be, and the 7600X isn't the rumored. I don't know what it was going to be. I think it was like 229. Some people were saying. I never had those numbers though. But I thought that they could happen. What I would say is if AMD isn't pricing the 6-core lower than before, if they are pretty much splitting the difference in what they're doing with the 8-core this time around, the non-V-cache 8-core, AMD would only do this if they think they can get away with it. Everyone listening to this, when you look at those prices, what AMD thinks is the i9 13900K is going to be in a dead heat with the 7950X. But they think they can charge $550 for their 12-core still. They think it's going to look good. And they think the 6 and the 8-core are going to look fine. They would not price it that way if they didn't think they could get away with that pricing. We've seen this before where the second Intel launches Alder Lake, AMD just drops a $300 8-core. They would have made this $300 if they thought they had to, guys.
And I think the 7700X is a weirder one compared to their other 8 cores because, last gen they launched a 5800X and then they launched the 5700X later, to, like as you said, to compete with the price with Intel's pricing. The 7700X, I don't know if you want to call it the replacement for the 5800X, but it kind of is, and we'll see what the 7800X looks like that I think we all know is going to get launched, be announced with Vcache at some point in the next few months, which hopefully that they launch that for, I don't know, $500 or we'll see. But, I think the 8-core is a price adjustment. It's not like they're just charging more for that level of or for that equivalent tier. I don't think, at least.
Yeah, and if you look at this lineup, I think it's pretty clear what's going to happen. I think they want to launch a 7950 X3D for $800, and they just want to keep $800 guarded as their flagship CPU every gen. They don't want to lose that, and I think that, and who knows, maybe they'll do 900, but I think that's what they're planning on doing here, and they'll be like, yep, it's, whatever it's going to be. Well, I don't know. Actually, I would almost expect them to do 900 if it's as good as I think it will be, but
we'll see. If it's as good, if it's that good, then I think they could charge 900 for it.
But it's hard to say because, and we'll get to it in the next story, right? But it's just interesting to think about this. How do you price it? 'Cause I don't know if they would. Maybe they would just do 800 because they'll say, the V-cache version of the 16 core, most people who buy the 16 core aren't gaming. And so we just have to acknowledge that. And half the applications, there's a minor increase and it doesn't warrant any extra money. So maybe they would do 800. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. But frankly, I think if it's as good as it could be, they could probably just get away with 1,000. And then, they're leaving room for a $450 to $500 7800 X3D. I think they can easily charge possibly even 500 if it's as good as I think it could be.
Oh yeah. I don't know exactly where they're going to land on price for that. I would guess somewhere between 450 and 500, though. Probably closer to 500.
All right, but so let me go through. I took notes. Let me and so I don't know if you wrote down any little things they said, but I did. 47% higher performance per watt in V-Ray. That's just one thing, but that's a big takeaway here because they showed on previous slides, like in a previous presentation, like 25% higher minimum performance per watt increase. And I was a little concerned about that. I was like, that's less than I would have expected. But here they're bragging about almost a 50% performance per watt increase, which is what I would have expected moving to 5 nanometer. 10% higher single threading in Geekbench than an i9. Again, there you go. I think a lot of and AMD was also happy to show a slide where I believe they showed the i9 12900K, then the 7600X,
Yeah.
7770. They're like, our entire generation's better than everything Intel has at gaming, basically. So I think they're pretty happy with that, and that is just I think the 13900K from Raptor Lake is going to be maybe marginally better at gaming, but like worse in multi-threading by a hair, which is what I've always kind of heard they expect. There were a lot of jabs. Here's another note I have. We have been a trusted supplier to our customers. We delivered again on time. Lots of jabs at Intel's execution issues.
Oh, yeah.
I got another quote here. 225%, or I don't remember if it was that, or 235% IPC increase since like a decade ago. That's funny to see as well, that like we're over tripling IPC from where we were a while ago. To anyone who's still holding on to a Sandy Bridge, or especially like a Bulldozer CPU, this is a big upgrade.
I'd like to see how many people still have Bulldozer CPUs. Is it like 12, 13 people left? Like,
I mean,
that's still
you'd be
an 8-core.
surprised. Someone write in if you're listening to this or watching this. I almost guarantee someone's going to write in and say, "Hey, I am man."
Yeah.
There were some other big things here too. All right, so they had a slide that said 62% lower power at the same performance for the 7950X versus the 5950X. What they're showing right there, they're telegraphing, guys, that the 7950X is going to fit in a 45 watt TDP. And you go, what product could they be telegraphing they're about to launch a laptop?
Who knows?
Yeah. And they had another slide, which is kind of the other side of this corner. They said they are 47% more efficient than Alder Lake, which again, in a laptop means they're just going to be 7% higher performance.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I was kind of referencing earlier on with like lower clocks, but it seems like their performance per watt is pretty damn good, even if they're increasing TDP this generation, which I guess that's the other big negative is they're increasing TDPs, but I think we all knew that was going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll have to see how big of an issue it really is. I mean, people have been cooling 10 nanometer / Intel 7 processors that use over 200 watts for years now. I don't think people are going to have trouble cooling a 170 watt 5 nanometer chip. Where you need good cooling, yes, but I mean, it is what it is here. And I think it's very telling looking at some of the graphs they showed. Like, yes, there are some where it's below 13% or it's, below the average performance increase. But there are other games and non-gaming benchmarks where you see a 30%, even like not even multi-threaded apps, like 30% or more increase. And that's something I tried to convey in previous videos, that I understand Zen 4 isn't as much of an efficiency increase as some of their other generations were, but that Zen 4 is just a very important stepping stone in minimizing more of the weaknesses in the Zen architecture. Like,
Mhm.
and those are the ones tied to a lot of the ones tied to clock speed and scaling IPC at higher clock speeds. And they've now solved those, which means, well, yes, that means some of the apps didn't need those optimizations. Other apps are getting up to like a 50% increase. So it's a big deal, and it's funny to see some games, and it doesn't surprise me at all. Some games, it's like a 6% increase in performance. Some games over 30. And it's like, yep, those are the
Yeah.
games that use the CPU that way.
Yeah, I mean, you always see that with new architectures. It's just, yes, sometimes you get almost no benefit. Sometimes you get way more than they report because that's, yeah.
And then in terms of other little snippets I wrote down, um, so the guy said on stage Zen 4C. So this is the Bergamo, 16 cores per CCD instead of 8 cores, just so everyone knows. He said Zen 4C is the same functionality as Zen 4 in half the area, coming out first half of 2023. So I think that's when I said Bergamo was going to come out. So that's cool to hear them confirm that. I wonder what he means by same functionality, because it's like, like,
Yeah.
does that mean 90% of the same performance per core? Because that's something I keep asking sources, and a lot of them still aren't sure, which is interesting because I think we know by now. Does that surprise you too, that we don't know like the performance of Zen 4C per core yet? Like, we still really don't, and it's not that far away.
Yeah, I just think the use cases for Zen 4C are just going to be a lot more limited and more way way more towards the professional end. So maybe that just isn't leaking as much as, I don't know, stuff that has more consumer interest.
Yeah. Um, but I'm curious because there are some. I don't think they're rumors, but there's been speculation floating around, like for like the follow up to Mendocino could, like, I don't know if it would be Sonoma Valley, but could something like that
Mhm.
get an 8-core CCX that's Zen 4C instead of like 4 Zen 4 something, like that's something I continue to wonder though, is like how much performance is lost in what applications, because I am really curious if they can make a tiny APU and like throw that into like some handheld gaming device.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, especially if they could save on space with the cores and, add something else to it, like better graphics.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
if they even care about that, I don't I don't know if AMD does, but
Reese, what is it? Hey, what's this message over here? You want treats, belly rubs, walks, and to not overpay for Windows keys. Well, I can definitely handle the treats, belly rubs, and walks on my own. I can't help Reese with getting reasonably priced Microsoft keys without CDKeyoffer.com. This piece of content is sponsored by CDKeyoffer.com, a long-term sponsor of Moore's Law's Dead and its community for any time someone in my community needs reasonably priced Office or Microsoft operating system keys without paying excessive monopolistic pricing. But that's not all they offer either. They also have great deals on PlayStation, Steam, Origin, and Uplay keys, and physical products like gaming chairs and keyboards and mice as well. They are always running sales, but make sure you use the best code possible provided for Moore's Law's Dead fans for the biggest discount. Use the links in the description or on screen, and then the code BROKENSILICON to get 25% off Windows codes, or Die Shrink for 3% off everything else on the website. Being on these links really does help the channel a lot, and using the offer codes helps it even more. It keeps CDKey Offer as a reliable sponsor for this community and for you to use again in the future as they keep sponsoring us. Go to CDKeyoffer.com today. But yeah, there's more I actually do want to say about the Zen 4 reveal, but I feel like I can't really touch on it until I get through some of the reader mails and actually get into the next story, which just this whole soup of Zen 4, Zen 4 Vcache, and Raptor Lake is what I really want to get into without feeling like we're going to retread ground. So before I do that, though, let me just look at some of the initial reactions on the Moore's Law's at Discord, which you guys get access to if you support us on Patreon. Someone says it seems like Intel will be able to fight AMD on desktop, but I have no idea what they're going to do in laptop. Benjamin says that 75% better performance per watt at 65 watts has to be terrifying Intel right now. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it seems like I saw a lot of people right before the presentation, for some reason, expect AMD fanboys to get owned here, but they all put their tails between their legs after this, as it's starting to sink in. No, Zen 4 is more impressive than Zen 3. There's nothing to be disappointed about, unless you believe the most insane stuff.
I mean, we'll see how it shakes out, but yeah,
We need to wait for benchmarks, right? Like, who knows?
Yeah.
But
I mean, right now it's almost seeming like this might be the most impressive one since Zen was released, you know?
yeah. Yeah. All right. I do want to touch on this one here. Bfish writes in and he says, "Hi, Tom and Dan. I have an emulation question. AVX 512 and Zen 4 should give it a leg up on at least Alder Lake for emulation. And guys, I doubt you noticed this, Dan. They actually had Dolphin Bench on the list of IPC increases, and it had a 32% increase. So that's like a Nintendo emulator. So there you go. There you go, Bfish. There's your answer.
It's an interesting benchmark to show off for considering I don't think I guess I don't know if
It's legal to
Nintendo-
run the benchmark.
Yeah, I guess I don't. That's true. It's just I don't know how much Nintendo cares about Dolphin Simulator. I doubt they love it, considering how much they love protecting their IP. But
Well, if Nintendo doesn't want people to emulate their games, maybe they should frickin' let us play them on any modern system instead of telling us to pay $300 for a smartphone SoC with friend codes. A suggestion, Nintendo. Maybe there wouldn't be such a robust Nintendo emulator community if you made any reasonable hardware to play your games on.
No, it's probably not it.
No, it couldn't be that. But I could do a whole Daishin. I really do think like the Nintendo emulator community is big, specifically because a lot of people like me don't want to buy Nintendo hardware specifically. But anyways, though, Bfish says, for those of us that want to play games that presumably will never make it to PC, like NHL hockey in my case, how strong do you think CPUs will have to be to emulate current gen consoles, specifically the PS5 and the Xbox Series? When do you see us getting to this level? So I can't speak for NHL hockey, but Xbox puts all their games on PC, don't they? And PlayStation's moving half of their games to PC, and if they don't, they're not that expensive, and they run I don't know. My answer that I wrote down ahead of time for this is I'm not an expert in this, but I don't feel like half of the games you want an emulator for are going to be necessary for PlayStation. And like the time it would take to program an emulator. I mean, look how long it's taken them to get the PS3 running.
Yeah, I know.
I think Sony will just release, Bloodborne to PC by then, supposedly, allegedly, and otherwise, if they did make an emulator, I have to assume it'd be easier, though, because it's literally Zen architectures that they're using in the consoles.
That's probably true. But yeah, I guess NHL specifically is not on PC for some reason.
It's on Series X, huh?
Yeah, I thought...
That's weird.
I thought all of the EA Sports games came to PC. Or I guess I just assumed they did. But I guess for some reason, NHL doesn't.
Yeah, I guess there you go. There's an example of a game you might want an emulator for still that's on PlayStation and Xbox. Zig13 writes in and he says, if you look in Ryzen Master, it tells you which of your cores are the best per CCD. And then that info is shared with the Windows scheduler. With Zen 3, I believe it is also now possible to overclock undervolt cores individually. Even as games become more threaded, one core is usually loaded much more than others. If they are already binning individual cores at the factory, why doesn't AMD sell CPUs with one core pre-overclocked above the rest? It would be a great way to differentiate and upsell to the X models, and they can market it as a game core. I mean, Zig, I think they already do. That's what that max boost clock is. The only thing I would say is I understand you can overclock some golden sample individual cores sometimes with AMD right now. But I think AMD was conservative in how they marketed their max boost clocks with Zen 3 because they got a lot of backlash. If you remember, Dan, with Zen 2. Yeah. Because yes, have I seen my 3950X hit 4.7 gigahertz before? Of course I have. But it's a blink of an eye when it does it. It's usually, or actually with PBO, it's not the blink of an eye. It does actually get above that. But like at stock settings, it was very rare. And I think you just got to think of it from the perspective of they basically already do what you're saying, Zig.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that it's just a difference in marketing terminology where I think that they get that backlash just because their terminology was basically the same as what Intel called like their turbo clocks are similar to that at least.
And I guess I would also say, at least up until now, AMD has not felt it necessary to launch some model with another 100 megahertz above it or something. They're like, good enough. They did before with Zen 2 at the XT, but they just didn't feel like they needed to at Zen 3. And then I also think at the same time they undersold the max boost clock compared to Zen 2 because they didn't want backlash again. So I don't know, but they're basically doing what you're saying.
Yeah, it's always been more of Intel's game to bin the hell out of their CPUs.
Let us then move on. Speaking of binned premium CPUs, to story number 3. Moore's Law Z leaks early Zen 4 X3D performance, launch dates, and hints at laptop variants. All right, so this write-up was left more general since I wasn't sure if AMD would tease Zen 4 with Vcache, but I did leak, and this is where I do speak in the first person to the one of the opening reader mails, by the way. This is where I do speak in the first person. Last week, I did leak Zen 4 with Vcache, and here's just the summary of all of the little tweets and videos I put out last week. Number 1, Zen 4 review kits should have already shipped, from what I'm told, actually. And they are Zen 4 is ready. Reviewers are expected to be receiving them in mass the first week of September. Without saying exactly how long they ship, I did sound like slower shipping, though. So first week of September, Zen 4 is in transit based on what I'm told. Additionally, multiple sources confirmed the review embargo is probably pushed back from 9/13 to about a week later to September 22nd, and that X670E launches September 27th with Zen 4, which now we know from AMD that is happening. These delays for the motherboard are because of bugs in AMD's Expo features, which is AMD's version of XMP for RAM.
Okay.
And they don't want there to be any chance of bugs or issues. They want this to work perfectly. So I think from AMD's perspective, they're like, we'll delay it a week and a half, and that'll just mean more stock is available at day one anyway. So, and then I also confirmed B650 launches October 10th, which I don't remember if AMD literally confirmed that day. They did say October. I saw that. But at least as of a week ago, I told October 10th, and that seems to be correct still. And then the big information. I confirmed that AMD plans to launch Zen 4 with Vcache in Q1, and that at least in a one comparison with some benchmarks I saw, and I think there was some confusion over this. So I have benchmarks that show various performance differences between Zen 3 with Vcache, Zen 4 with Vcache. And there is also a summary page I didn't show because I think it would give away my source. Without going into what the report looks like, I think it would be very, very easy for AMD to trace back the groups that had access to this information. So let's just leave it at that and say that, because I did see some people in the comments go, Tom, your average of benchmarks is like 25 or 28%, not 30%. And I know I didn't show all the benchmarks, because if I showed literally even if it was made a little vague, if I showed literally every benchmark I had, then AMD could reverse engineer to know the exact report. I showed 4 of the benchmarks, and I told you the conclusions in the report. The conclusion was that at least in these benchmarks, at least in these ones, Zen 4 with Vcache was outperforming Zen 4 without Vcache by around 30%. And in these same benchmarks on average, Zen 3 with Vcache outperforms Zen 3 by about 10 to 15%. And those are the words it says. It says 10 to 15%. And I think this is really important because, well, I decided not to show the exact benchmarks. It seems like this is not an outlier, though. 10 to 15% is pretty typical of Zen 3 with Vcache. If anything, it's actually a little lower than a lot of the gaming ones we've saw that are 20% or more. And in the same benchmarks, Zen 4 with Vcache got a bigger increase. So it's not like we saw something here where Zen 3 with Vcache got like 30%. It's like, no, it got about what you would expect, and this was higher. So I think that at least tells us it's highly likely Zen 4 with Vcache will get a similar uplift over Zen 4 that Zen 3 with Vcache got over Zen 3, right? This probably isn't an outlier considering the results for Zen 3 to Zen 3D. So, and then I also leaked that Dragon Range, although this has loosely been known, but I reconfirmed Dragon Range is literally Raphael repackaged into a smaller package for laptop. And I got it confirmed from a source I distinctly asked. So it can support Vcache. It's like, yes, 100%. It will be a decision if AMD does not launch a Vcache variant of Dragon Range, the 16-core laptop chip, which again, in the previous story, the Zen 4 reveal, we just confirmed, AMD was talking about how they can get 5950X performance into 65 watts or less. So, and 65 watts or less. So that tells you right there what they're hinting at. And I
You
can't wait
think
to see.
that might go into a performance laptop or something, Tom?
I don't know. They probably just showed that for fun. But yeah, so
Yeah.
I'd say that was the big, in terms of like the biggest leaks coming from this channel over the past 2 weeks, was the Zen 4 Vcache information, which you've seen the original report. And when you saw it, you were pretty excited, right?
I mean, yeah, like I think what you're saying, that it will give you at least that same increase in performance that Zen 3D did on this generation. It's a bit of an understatement, probably. I mean, it looks like it's.
I can't promise it, but
Yeah.
in this benchmark, which I do stress that over and over in the leak, it's one set of benchmarks, it's
That's
one
true.
report, and I don't know, it could depend on RAM speed. This is A0 silicon. Maybe there's a bigger increase when you're below 5 gigahertz. I don't know, but all indications are that we're getting, that's why I put it this way, in at least a Zen 3D upgrade for Zen 4 as well.
Yeah, I guess I see why you temper that
I'm
bit.
probably being overly cautious, but I insist.
But yeah, I mean, I think then the biggest hope after this for Zen 3D is that there isn't as much or any of the detriment to performance that Zen 3D kind of had on Zen 3, which I believe you discussed something with that being more like a voltage a voltage limit thing set on Zen 3D that kind of limited clock speeds, if I'm remembering correctly.
Right, and I do feel like it gets a bit repetitive how often we've said these things, but at the same time, it's like, it's also a widespread thing people have said over and over, so I feel like we have to keep dispelling this myth. Literally, Robert Halleck has said in multiple interviews it was not thermal issues that made them clock the 5800 X3D lower. It was a voltage limitation in the first generation of Vcache. The second generation has a higher voltage acceptance or whatever. Is there still going to be a slight clock speed regression, or is it still capped by voltage? From what I'm told, yes, it is still capped by voltage, but it's not guaranteed that it's going to be more. It's not guaranteed that it will have a regression, and if it is, I don't know that it's going to be more than like 100 or 200 megahertz. I think it's going to be less of a regression than what we saw with the 5800 X3D in clock speed.
Yeah, it's just, I think is important to highlight, because like that was the assumption everywhere, was that it was a thermal issue because you're putting more crap on top of the silicon. So
So in terms of other things to say here, I actually will drop a mini leak. I don't have a thing to show on screen, but and it's not a very important leak because it's not coming out based on what I'm told. But just so everyone knows, I have been told by one of my best sources, and I'm telling you, the same people who got me the now correct Zen 4 IPC numbers, like, guys, there was a 7980X at some point, and it did go to 5.8 gigahertz or higher, but AMD is deciding not to launch it, it seems. Now, the reason, I wasn't given a reason, but if I had to guess, it's because they have Zen 4 Vcache coming out a quarter later, and they see literally no point in having some high clock. Like, where would they price it? Like, what are they like? So
I don't know how you would. I don't know how you would price those or market those against each other. So,
not to mention, at the end of the day, they're going to have an SKU, I believe, above the 7950X that they want to take all performance crowns. And so you're going to want to use the best yields for that either way. So let's say there's a voltage limit on second gen Vcache. Well, would you rather launch a 7980X that goes to 5.9 gigahertz, let's say, for 800, and then also at 800 have a 7950 X3D that goes to 5.6 gigahertz? Or would you rather take those best yields, and now they're just still 5.7 gigahertz because they're the best yields, but they're at lower voltage?
and
That's my guess.
Like 20% better performance or something in games, and
right.
Yeah, or would you rather have, what is that, 200 megahertz? That's like what, a 4% overclock or something like that?
Yeah. Like, why have both of those SKUs exist, especially if the second one's just going to be better 99.9% of the time? It's coming out within a quarter, and you could actually make that one that's usually better a little better again if you just use the best yields clock slightly lower to lower voltage. So that's what I think's going on. That's why I think we're not seeing at least right now, right? That's why I think we're not seeing AMD launch a 5.8 gigahertz variant. But I can't say this enough, and Angstronomics has said this too. They're 100% our samples hitting over 5.8 gigahertz. It's just I think those would better be used at a lower voltage at the same 5.7 gigahertz with Vcache. I think that's what AMD is doing. I guess the final thing to discuss when it comes to Zen 4 with Vcache, I have two other big takeaways. I guess let's nip this one in the butt just to make sure we round this out. AMD talked about their mobile efficiency. What really gets me excited, AMD is basically bragging today in their reveal about how they can fit 5950X performance in a 45-watt TDP. You add Vcache on top of that, it's conceivable they could have it'd be called like a 7980 X3D HS or something, like, the efficient version of the top model. I'm guessing they won't do that, but
probably they'll probably call it something not that terrible. But
I don't know. I've seen crazy things before. We'll have to see. But it's like what I'm getting to is the fact that they can put Vcache on Dragon Range, and we know it's coming early next year. And we know AMD wants to conquer enthusiast laptop gaming finally. We could argue they kind of have before, but they really want to take it firmly now. I don't see how no one's missing this. Like, they can make a 65-watt chip without Vcache that's better than the 5950X, so probably 10-15% worse than a 13900K gaming. If they throw Vcache that 15 to 30% boost on top of it that I've leaked, I think they can launch something where they can market the new Razer 15-inch gaming laptop with better performance than a desktop i9. I really think they're going to... I don't know why they wouldn't at least have one flagship Vcache model for laptop.
I mean, yeah, that thing's going to go on like $3,000 lap. Maybe more than that, but $4,000 laptops probably. But, just for the marketing, it's worth having something like that, I think.
I mean, just for the Intel-like slides where they could do a presentation and they can go, our best processors double their laptop processor performance, and they could technically claim it in a few things. I don't know how you miss that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, and we're going to start getting into it soon, but again, let's say it's just even 20% higher increase in gaming performance on average. I think AMD knows they're going to have the gaming crown on average very soon. And the reason they haven't shown off the 7950 X3D and the 7800 X3D yet, which we can all tell by looking at the weird gap in their lineup is probably coming, is literally because they know they're launching about a month before Raptor Lake. They want a month of sales. And then I think they announce it a week before Raptor Lake comes out. So all Raptor Lake reviews are like, but in 3 months, you can get 3 to 6 months, whatever it ends up. Maybe 3 to 5. In 3 to 5 months, you can get something better than this anyway. So if you want the best, we don't know why you would buy this more expensive Raptor Lake CPU or something.
Yeah, and that's good marketing. Like, I don't know what else to say beyond that. They took the wind out of Intel's current sales, and they are going to do it again if they can.
But you would agree, like, it's highly likely they tease Vcache around when Raptor Lake comes out, right?
Yeah, I would guess right before, right before. Yeah, I don't know why they would wait until after if they know they're going to launch it. Even if they don't know, like, end clock speeds, just say this exists, by the way.
Right. And let us remember this. Part of this leak, I confirmed that they are shipping Genoa-X engineering samples within a month. So they're going to have them ready to show off within a month. And although it's not final, it's close to final. And AMD showed off a 5800 X3D prototype, like 3 quarters before it actually came out? So
yeah, it was a while ago.
I understand it's not always the same, but I would assume that means they could have probably shown it off today if they wanted to, but they decided to basically not show off RDNA 3. I'm sorry. I actually was kind of thought the RDNA 3 teaser at the end was pretty annoying.
It was literally just like, this exists, by the way. Yeah. Like, did they even show performance? Like, I don't, it doesn't matter if they did because they're not comparing it to anything. But it basically was just this. This is being ran on RDNA 3, by the way, guys. So be excited, I guess.
Yeah, my eyes kind of glazed over when I noticed it wasn't Bloodborne. After that, I was like, okay, so I don't think they're going to say anything, and they didn't.
Yeah.
All right. Let us then move on to the next story as we are kind of dancing around talking about this. Story number 4. Rumors continue to emerge suggesting Raptor Lake may cost more than Alder Lake. Here's the write-up. Over the past week, rumors, although certainly not ones Moore's Law that can 100% confirm personally in all forms, have nonetheless been emerging that Intel plans to charge more for many of its upcoming products, specifically Raptor Lake, when it comes to a lot of outside rumors circulating. The writer does not want to dwell on the specifics of what others have said, but I would like to add my own input from a source. Now, I am directly told, and I quote, and we will put it on screen here, that we were just told by Intel that pricing on Xeon is going up across the board by 10 to 15% in response to recent earnings, and that additionally, Intel expects DDR5 prices to stay 25% more expensive than DDR4 for the foreseeable future. So I included that, even though it's a little off subject, just because I thought everyone would be interested to know. Good news, bad news. DDR5 prices are going to come down a lot soon, but they're still going to remain more per gigabyte than where DDR4 is right now. But anyways, finishing the write-up, at this point, we would caution people from quantifying exact Raptor Lake SKU pricing just yet. But at the very least, what we will say is that we would be surprised at Moore's Law is dead at this point if Intel isn't charging a little higher pricing per tier this upcoming gen compared to Alder Lake's MSRPs. And, well, that explains why Zen 4's pricing is probably where it is. And just to be clear, I didn't want to, like, double down on anything other people have leaked, because if I don't personally know it, I don't want to double down. But, like, DigiTimes is reporting that AMD does not plan to follow suit with Intel. And I think this goes for both, as we've seen with Zen 4. Zen 4 pricing is, I don't think you can't say Zen 4 costs more than Zen 3. Like, only one SKU does, and one of them's cheaper, actually.
Once again, I feel like the 5700 versus 7700 is a hard comparison to make, because the 7700X is more of a 5800 replacement, and the 7700X came out like more than a year after the rest of the lineup, right?
I think so.
So the fact that launched for $300 isn't some shocker. I mean, once again, I think people were obviously hoping that the 7600 would drop to like 200 or 230.
I am specifically a little disappointed in that one, to be honest. But
because I was thinking the other thing that's missing from Zen 4 now is they really don't have anything to compete with the Intel 400F. But
I think AMD's competition is going to be price dropping the 5800 X3D.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, hey, if you want to save money, you probably want DDR4 anyway. So just, we're discounting AM4 motherboards. We're discounting all of Zen 3. Get that. And, it's comparable anyways.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't specifically say anything, right? But multiple outside sources that, that I'm saying, like, that we don't use, but like circulating on the web right now that don't look fake to me, are basically suggesting, it seems like, let me look here, that Raptor Lake is basically going up 10% in pricing, kind of ish. And I'm hearing the same in the Xeon realm, and no one's told me otherwise. Like, they're like, yeah, Raptor Lake's probably going to go up in price a little bit. So if you think about that, then I don't really see Intel having really any advantage here this gen. The whole thing me and you, Dan, talked about, right? If I'm wrong, for the past half a year is, at least that i5 will be under $300. And maybe it will be, but if the i5 is more expensive than the 7600X, and I've seen a lot of people do this, they're like, oh, the 7600X, only beat the i9 12900K by like 5% in gaming. And it's like, yeah, well, their top
also
ones,
half the price. So,
and they're, and AMD's top ones, like, what is it, 5-10% faster clock speeds, and that's just going to be that much higher performance. So no, and the same's going to go for Intel here. Their i5s will not clock as fast as they haven't, and Alder Lake has shown that. The i9 12900KS, it does clock faster than the Alder Lake i5. So with that in mind, then I think what you're going to see is an i5 13600K that's probably priced a little more than the 7600X, and probably has about the same performance in gaming, worse efficiency. Then when it comes to multi-threading, it's going to be 6 big versus 6 big plus 8 little. Yeah, they'll win multi-threading, I think, by 20, 30% to 40%, but I don't know if AMD cares, because AMD is going to say, we use less energy, we cost less, we have a cheaper platform, we have a more future-proof platform, and at the end of the day, even though they win in multi-threading, and they have to underline this, some apps don't like the little cores. And so I think that's going to be the argument AMD makes. Does that mean I won't recommend the i5 sometimes over AMD? No, I might. But I think AMD thinks they can sell just fine here. And they can price the 7700X where it is at $400. It might be 20% less than the i7 and be the same gaming performance again. So you see what I'm saying? It's like AMD consistently is like, hey, we're 10 to 20% cheaper than the Intel counterpart for the same gaming performance. And in multi-threading, we lose by how much more they cost, but we're using less energy on a newer platform. I think that's what AMD's argument is.
And the only one where I guess, yeah, I could see them losing out a decent amount, at least with like, if like the 13900K edges out in gaming performance, that might end up being cheaper than the 7950X. But unless they decide to increase that by like 20% or something crazy.
But again, I think what we're going to see at the very top, and again, there's no need to clip this and say Tom was wrong. I'm saying I think probably, because all of these are going to be close, guys. Come on. We're probably going to see the top Raptor Lake i9 2 to 7% better at gaming than the 7950X. It's going to trade blows. And then in multi-threading, I think you're going to see that same win by AMD. And so AMD's going to be like, whatever, it's a tie. Same price, tie in performance overall. We use less energy. We're on a newer platform that supports more, 5.0 SSDs. Why would you choose them over us? You'll be able to upgrade to Zen 6 with this. Why would you choose them over us? And I can't argue with AMD. I'll recommend Raptor Lake if they give you better performance for lower price, if the motherboards are competitive. But otherwise, I think there's plenty of scenarios where it's just as easy to recommend AMD.
Yeah.
And again, AMD launches a month sooner.
And that is unless, I guess, the little cores are utilized a lot better next generation. Because, I mean, with 16 cores on Raptor Lake, that could give a substantial benefit to Intel over AMD.
Maybe, and that's what me and you have wondered this whole time. But so far in hardware and box testing, he's not betting on it. So we'll have to see there. But I thought that was important to cover today, because I actually did have some, personal sources backing up that DigiTimes leak and all the other leaks going out there that Raptor Lake will probably be more expensive than Alder Lake, and so that's why AMD doesn't think they need to be that aggressive with pricing. Both of these companies are pricing things where they think they can get away with it. We're gonna have to wait for final reviews to see. But again, guys, I just think they're gonna be close. I think they're gonna be competitive. I think what we keep saying, I don't think this is gonna be like a slam dunk for either company, except that one of them comes out sooner. AMD is more efficient, AMD, and has a platform that'll last longer, AMD. So Holgery writes in, I've heard Tom mention several times that he thinks AM5 is a stronger platform. Well, several times in the past minute, I'm probably actually getting a bit repetitive. So you're right. Can you go a bit more into that? If we were to assume that Intel's 13th gen and AMD's 7000 series are relatively the same performance, well, if you use the term relatively, they're definitely relatively the same performance. And if we ignore power draw, since it's for desktops, what are the pros and cons you see for each platform? AM5 is brand new, but 13th gen will probably be the last for LGA 1700 sockets. So is it just that? Is it that this year we'll see AMD's first DDR5 platform and Intel's second? Will any of this really matter? It really just comes down to the two big things. AMD doesn't make you cut your graphics lanes in half to use 5.0 SSDs. And AMD will let you upgrade to Zen 5 and presumably Zen 6 with this socket. That is the advantage. But when you're talking about two things, as you say, Halgerty, that are relatively the same performance, why would you choose one that doesn't have those pros? It has no pros over the other one.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of I don't know what the advantage of buying into the Intel platform is right now, because there, and that actually is a thing I think with Intel that they need to figure out at some point, or I don't know, maybe they don't. The fact that AMD supports its platforms for substantially longer is just kind of a permanent advantage, because I don't know, like 2 out of 3 generations, if you're getting relatively the same performance with each gen next to each other, there's like a 2 out of 3 chance that the AMD one is going to be the one that's supported longer. You know?
Mhm. And again, it's not to say that's the most important thing. In terms of upgrading processors, yeah, I almost never do. Sure. But
Yeah,
why would I not take the one that lets me do that if they're the same performance? Why would
yeah,
I
it's
choose the
like,
one that doesn't have it?
yeah, like if if it was a dead end platform, but Intel's processors were like 30-40% better or something, then okay, yeah, I'll pick that over the one that has longevity probably. But
hmm
but when when all else is equal, there's, like you say, there's just no point in not getting the longer supported platform, which they said will be supported through 2025 at least. Which, yeah, that means at least Zen 6.
hmm
I wouldn't bet on Zen 7 at this point, but
No, probably not. But, and who knows? Maybe it'll just be like, what? Maybe they'll just have like Zen 5 and then a Zen 5 Plus and then some half Zen 6. I mean,
mhm,
maybe, but at a minimum, I would expect that. And with Intel, it's nothing, nada. So,
yeah,
which I don't understand that. I have seen people go, yeah, but we don't technically know how many series from AMD. And it's like, well, how does this? It's more than Intel, so that's how many more. And AMD literally doesn't know how many generations they will support on it yet. They're not hiding it. They just don't know yet, right? If
yeah,
they find that Zen 6 could get a 20% performance increase and a bunch of other benefits by moving to a new platform sooner, they might do that, but they don't know that they need to do that yet. So let us move on then to story number 5. Nvidia to stay aggressive with the sell-off assistance to AIBs amongst bad earnings. And here's the write-up. This podcast has already mentioned Moore's Law's dead tweets from last week that mentioned Zen 4's brief and delays and other information about motherboard launch dates. But so far unmentioned is that one of those tweets that mentioned AMD info also had some Nvidia info. That was that Nvidia is planning to continue their AIB assistance of selling off Ampere stock well into September. Listeners will be good to remember that MLID's video going over a potential 4070 and 4080 launch date already talked about the more aggressive actions kicking in late August. But back then, nobody confirmed if NVIDIA was going to do anything after those aggressive actions in late August. And, well, now we know they will. And all of this comes on the back of NVIDIA also announcing bad earnings that detailed an earnings per share of 51 cents instead of $1.26 as expected, revenue of 6.7 billion versus the expected 8.1 billion. Nvidia's gaming department revenue was down 33% year over year to $2 billion. The chipmaker said it expected $5.9 billion in sales in its third quarter of this year versus the consensus estimate of 6.95 billion. Nvidia also went on to blame macroeconomic headwinds for driving a sudden slowdown in consumer demand and claimed that they had limited visibility when it came to predicting cryptocurrency mining demand, despite just agreeing to pay $5 million to the SEC for willfully lying about what they knew about mining demand to investors in 2017. In other words, Nvidia is getting hit by the mining crash hard and consumer demand crash hard as well. And they're pretending they couldn't have known what would happen despite being caught lying about this type of thing before. But they're going to continue to help AIBs sell off Ampere because they want to get the stock off by September, the end of September, and launch Lovelace on time. So barely got through that. I almost completely jumbled up everything I was saying, Dan. But yeah, I tried to combine a few things here. NVIDIA's bad earnings are officially out. They gave us a warning before, but now they're officially out. And I guess expect some prices on some of their Ampere products to continue to stay low until they get rid of them.
which good for us, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to me, this mostly just screams that like they didn't. I mean, it screams that they tried to do the frickin' mining thing again. It almost seems like,
hmm
where listen, you can sell to miners all you want, but the demand with miners is always going to be more transient than other stuff.
Well, and I don't know how many specifics I have at my fingertips to say about this, but I'm directly told by multiple contacts who get me a lot of other information. They're like, by the way, just so you know, NVIDIA knows exactly how many cards they're selling to miners. And they did in 2017, and they lied about it. Now I guess they're pretending they don't know any again, but they're probably speaking a little more carefully so as to not be sued this time around. Like they know, guys, they know how many people log into GeForce accounts, which they require. to use the GeForce experience. They've literally shipped some cards directly to miners. Nvidia knows this is because a significant portion of their gaming sales have been to miners. And by the way, their data centers up. Has anyone noticed a ton of A4000s flooding eBay for below $1,000 recently? Yeah, those were mining firms, and they're counting some of that also in their data center, which was up massively. It's because a lot of that was miners too, guys.
And it's like, to some extent, like we were talking about the consumer demand crash, which I'm curious how real that crash is, or if it's just mining finally catching up, where there's now less demand for new cards because all these mining cards are flooding the market.
True.
And driving the price down for everything. Because I don't know what would have caused this consumer demand in cards to have crashed.
Like inflation, recession. There's that type of stuff.
That's
so
true.
I do maintain it would be half that, but there's no way that at least half of it's from mining, though. It is.
That's probably true. I just have to wonder if some of it is a one problem just amplifying the other one, where it might make this apparent crash in consumer demand is probably made even worse by the fact that there's millions of mining cards, or I guess I won't say millions, but a lot of mining cards flooding into the market at this point.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much more I have to say about it. I find it ridiculous that they're pretending they don't know how many cards are going to miners. Like, we know, Nvidia. And also, it's exciting that they're going to continue to assist AIBs in selling off as many of these cards as they can. And in fact, Jensen literally said that an exciting new generation is coming and hinted at that they're going to unveil it late September. So it's no surprise. They want GA102 gone before October.
Yeah, and I don't know. I guess be on the lookout for $800 3090s because
I got one a month ago.
I'm looking right now. Nothing. You still got a good deal on that, Tom.
I think I did. Yeah, but I am seeing 3080s for 600 or less used. A lot more things are falling into stock at MSRP. I don't know. I think you're going to still continue to see the most aggressive actions for the 3090 Ti because I think it's going to make. Look, a 3090, it has 24 gigabytes of RAM. It will make sense to some people who are also creators like me at the same price as a 4070 because it'll have more RAM than the 4070. It will make sense to some people. And the 3080, if it hits $600, $500, that's cheaper than the 4070 will probably be 30-40% weaker. So that might be desirable to some people. But the 3090 Ti is going to make sense to absolutely nobody.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the increased power consumption for what you're getting. It's just, there's just no way. But let me move on here then to a tangential story. This summer, whether you're getting exercise outside or finding ways to stay active indoors like me, it's always nice to have something around that acts as a quick and tasty meal that's also healthy, full of protein, and reasonably priced. For me, that's Vite Ramen, who is a sponsor of this piece of content. Vite Ramen is an American company that pays its workers fair wages and crafts a protein and nutrient-dense meal that takes minutes to make without sacrificing taste. In fact, it's even quicker now with Ramen Go, a product that offers the same calories and taste as their traditional V3 packages you're probably used to now if you're a follower of this channel, while allowing you to even more quickly make your food or bring it to work for lunch. And they keep updating their recipes, like the new V3 edition of beef pho, so you keep having fun new flavors to try. Click the link in the description and use the offer code BROKENSILICON to save 10% off a variety of different special bundles just for Moore's Law fans that include things like spoons, chopsticks, and more if you so choose. This is a great deal for you, and it helps support this channel tremendously. Seriously, I eat it. It's tasty, it's healthy, it's fast. They keep making even better and better recipes that are quicker and quicker to make, and it's reasonably priced. Try Vite Ramen today. Story number 6, RTX 4090 24GB allegedly in production, but Nvidia doesn't want to launch GA102 competitors. So, in Nvidia's earnings, Nvidia overstock leaks, and now Nvidia production leaks, we also now have screenshots emerging showing that literally the RTX 4090 24GB has been in production supposedly since a couple weeks ago. And Nvidia has also, I'm just trying to segment so many weird little Nvidia things into two different stories, but also Nvidia has said they don't want to launch anything that directly competes with in-stock Ampere. which directly lines up with what I've been speculating for a while, which is to say that I do for sure Nvidia's launching the 4090 this year. There's just no way. Like, come on. And I think they want to launch the 4080. And I think the 4080 will be
I would assume the 4080 won't compete with any of Ampere. So
right. So I think they want to launch that, but I think it's probably going to be somewhere between like 30 to 40, 50% better. So they still don't want 3090 Ti's to be in stock. Like, because the second they launch a 4080, those all go, and
mm-hmm.
They want there to be some buffer there as well. So I think there's a very good chance that they launch the 4080 by the tail end of this year. And I still think they'll at least paper launch the 4070, but those are getting close enough, especially the 4070, which is probably just a hair better than the 3090 Ti. And raster, but probably better than that in ray tracing. They still don't want it to be close, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. I really have to say about this story either. I think I'll just reiterate my opinion on this. Like, the 4090 is coming in October, based on everyone I talked to this day. That's going to roughly double performance. So it's not even in the same solar system of the performance we have now. So they're happy to launch that. And then I think they want the 4080 to launch once they're confident the 3090 Ti is gone. And then they want to launch the 4070 once they're pretty much confident all of GA102 is gone. And I think they will stomach selling GA104 for $400. But again, that's the problem. A $400 3070 is kind of fine if there's a $600 4070, because it's going to be like 50% better than the 3070, 50% more RAM, 50% more price. You can probably sell those next to each other, and they're still making a profit if they sell a 3070 for $400 based on what I hear. But I don't think they're making a profit if they sell a 3080 for below 500 that easily. So they'd rather just sell it for 600 now than be forced to sell it for 500 later, whereas they're kind of fine selling the 3070 for 400 later, I think. Does that make sense? Did I describe that well enough?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I don't know. Lower cards in their lineup have always been a mess, but I don't know what they're going to do about the lower cards, because do they just cancel all of them, or do they try to sell those through? I guess. I don't know.
I don't know what else I have to say about this except 24 gigabytes is what's called out for the 4090, which I know some people said maybe you'll have 48 gigabytes, but I don't think so. That doesn't make any sense to me. Golden Bolt writes in, says, hey, Tom, do you expect there to be an $800 or less card out before the end of the year that beats the 3090 Ti by at least 20%? I mean, you're describing the 4080. It will be more than, and he said at least, so I'm not saying it will be only 20%. He said, yeah, it'll be at least that much more. And I think they're probably going to try to sell it for 800. Could it be 1,000? Maybe, but I lean towards 800.
Really hope they wouldn't try to push the 80 to $1,000, but you never know, I guess.
And I don't know why they would think they could get away with that when RDNA 3 is going to be very competitive again. So,
yeah.
Now, if they launch the 4070 by then, I think that gets close to what you wanted. It won't be 800, but I think it's going to be about what you're looking for, Golden Bolts. And again, I just think Nvidia wants to wait. They're going to have their top RDNA 3 competitor. They're going to wait until they sell off GA102, I think, before they bother with the 4080 and 4070. Timo writes in, hi, Tom and Dan. As this week is a die shrink week again, hopefully there'll be 4 new GPUs and CPUs. Wait, let me see here. Oh, okay. So let me skip ahead. Timo, work on your grammar a little bit, but generally, his question is, if there was basically a world war and you had to buy a bunch of graphics cards up to save yourself, like if TSMC went down, we couldn't get new stuff for 3 years, what would you buy? And I said I'd probably just buy a 6600 or a 2060 if I could get that for close to 200. And then if I thought it was really going to be bad, like literally TSMC goes offline and everything's delayed 3 years, I'd probably buy a used A5000 as well. And I'd get a 2060 or a 6600 and a used A5000. And that way, if you had a graphics card break, I could send it to you so you could keep working. I don't know what you would do if you had a crystal ball and you knew this was going to happen. I mean, honestly, if I literally had a crystal ball, supposedly I should buy up everything and sell it.
Yes, if I knew it was going to happen, I would probably buy several graphics cards.
Yeah, like if I literally knew. But if I mostly knew, I'd probably just try to get something that meets my needs for under 300 and leave it and test it once and then put it back in the box,
Yeah.
All right. Now, let us move on to the final wrap up. These are the stories that don't deserve a main story, but deserve a mention. Sony announced the DualSense Edge wireless controller. I really haven't looked at this very closely, Dan. Have you? Like, do you have any thoughts on? Well, I know there's an Xbox Elite controller. People have been saying for a while, why the heck isn't there one from Sony? It has replaceable thumbsticks, a couple toggles on the back. I think one's for dead zone and paddles, of course, that you can program for specific actions.
Yeah, I mean, not too much to say on it. With these types of things, price is everything. So, I mean, we'll see what they charge for it. It doesn't look like it's as customizable as the
Mm-hmm.
the Elite controller. So hopefully, it's closer to like, I don't know, 120. But if it's more than 120, if it's like $150, I'm almost certainly not going to get it.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say is, to those who say who cares, a couple gaming tournaments I've been to recently, you'd be surprised how many people use modded PlayStation controllers, and this
Mm.
was a huge untapped market. Like, and I mean it. It surprised me. I expected a lot of PC gamers to have Xbox controllers next to their keyboard and mouse. Most had PlayStation 4 modded controllers, so you can say it doesn't matter because you use an Xbox controller, but apparently a lot of professionals gamers have a PlayStation controller on the side, and that surprised me. And Sony's just been leaving money on the table for some unknown reason. I guess the only other thing I'd say about this too is they better let you. And does it say you can replace the sticks, caps, I don't see multiple colors here though. This is one of those things where it's like, dude, you better let me order a custom color. I'm not just going to buy this and then wait for like the red version to come out that I actually want.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that yet. I don't.
Doesn't seem like it. I guess they
Yeah.
could confirm it, but they haven't confirmed it so far.
Yeah, I have to assume that they'll make that eventually, but I don't know. Sony does seem to have a weird strategy with their controllers where it's like, well, we release the one thing and then we release the new one with a new color to, I don't know, try to get people to spend money twice.
Probably. In other news, let's just round out these. A new lighter PS5 has been released again. Just like in 2021, they made something that's lighter, cheaper, lower energy. I've seen some people suggest maybe this is a 6 nanometer refresh we've been hearing about, but I don't see anything confirming that yet. And I reached out to a source about this, and let me just double check here. I don't think they got back to me about it. They did not get back to me, so I'll probably know. But for now, I can't confirm. And then also, their PS5 price was just increased in all regions. Well, not all regions besides the US, it seems. And Falto says, with the price of the PS5 going up in many regions, will the USA also see a price increase later on? My answer is it's not impossible, but you guys got to consider that the US dollar is matching the euro now, and inflation is higher in other regions than the US. And so it's not unexplainable why Sony may have not raised the US price, because they don't want to raise prices unless they have to. The US dollar is
Yeah.
doing pretty well for as much as people are complaining everywhere. And I think justifiably about inflation. It
Well,
is not as bad in the US.
I mean, apropos to this, like, did you see that the euro fell below the value of the US dollar this week?
No, I did not. Is it stayed below there, or you just
Well,
like saw blurbs that it
l-
happened at least briefly?
let me see. Okay, it is exactly $1 right now. So
That seems to be where it's like there's
so
because remember,
brief
people trade currencies like stocks, so that seems to be
yeah.
where the resistance is.
So last Monday it briefly fell below the value of the US dollar and now they're pretty much equal.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't remember what it was on average, what it was in each region. I don't think I really need to read it off, but it's basically like 4 to 10% or something increase depending on the region, and it's depending on not if Sony wants to dunk on its customers, but based on the inflation in each region, guys. So
Mhm.
it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And again, Falto, it's explainable why they haven't raised the price in the United States yet. But I wouldn't say never to that, of course. Um, Anyways, moving forward, let's see. I don't know. I'll just mention this briefly. The 4080 is now rumored by Copai to get 340 watts total board power. The only reason I'm mentioning this one out of all of the constant Twitter specs that are leaked every other day is I think 340 watts makes a lot more sense than like 400 for a 4080, because at 340 watts, I don't think there's literally a 3080 owner who would put in this board and it wouldn't work. And I think that's what Nvidia is thinking. Anyone who has a 350 watt 3090 or 450 watt 3090 Ti is probably happy to use a 450 watt 4090, but they got to be careful with what they do with the 4070 and the 4080. So,
Yeah.
all right. Additionally, in the wrap up, we have several stories about Intel here. So I just have it down. Intel is actually showing the A770 now. And I know, I think technically Linus had one, guys. I'm not saying they haven't shown it before, but like, it was weird. Do you agree? It was weird. They kind of showed it a little bit at one interview, and then like everything else was A750 for some bizarre reason. That is not how it usually works. Usually you show the uncut die, and then you like it's so weird.
I mean, yeah, I don't know.
I think it's worth mentioning though that they're now showing the A770 more.
Yeah, I guess they're kind of confident it's going to come out now. I don't know what anything means from Intel's marketing when it comes to Arc. Like it's just I literally cannot even hazard a guess what any of it ever means at this point, because it's like, yeah, I don't know, maybe this is coming out soon, or maybe they're desperately trying to hold attention on Arc still.
Well, what is it? October, November, yeah. So September is the last month of quarter 3. I think they're going to do at least a paper launch at the very end of September, which is what my leaked slides showed too. But yeah, it's just so funny. We spend like 30 minutes talking about Zen 4 and stuff. We have all these specific percentages, SKUs, pricing, dates you can buy, even every individual motherboard model. And then with Intel, it's just like, hey, they're kind of showing it. It's
To be fair, I'm very confident that I will be able to buy. I'm very confident I'll be able to buy Zen 4 on September 27th.
But let me see here, which TMC Payton writes, and he says, would you wager a Big Mac on Intel having a dedicated GPU Bible in the USA in 2022? I mean, yes, I would. The A380 technically went on sale finally like a week ago. So links in the description. They did sell the A380 in the US now, everybody. Additionally, apparently that A380 was benchmarked mining at 10 mega hash a second. That's really bad for a 75 watt card. I wouldn't double down on it staying that bad, though. Wouldn't surprise me if they optimize it more over time, but we'll see. And Xe Super Sampling had like a 30-minute video. That did surprise me that came out in that much detail. Although, to be honest, did you see this video, Dan, about Xe Super Sampling?
No, I didn't get the chance to see it.
It showed more specifics than usual. And there was some impressive increases. Like Ghostwire Tokyo got a 75% increase in 1440p. But at the same time, that was going from 25 to 53 frames a second. It's like, why would you show a chart that is getting 25 frames per second with your graphics card?
I don't know, man.
I just, when I look at the performance here, even with Xe Super Sampling, we can't be 100% sure until we do a test it, like hardware and box, same system, same settings exactly. But I don't know. I'm seeing like the A770 is like a 100. But Ghostwire performs pretty terribly. And I know it has ray tracing on before you guys spam me in the comments. I'm aware. But still, I don't know. Until I get third-party benchmarks, all of this really bores me because it's like, I just want to see the third-party benchmarks, Intel. Yeah. What they showed was interesting. There were some impressive numbers if they shake out that well on average. But until I see a third-party benchmark, again, this isn't its own story. There's a reason we spent 5 minutes on this and 30 minutes on Zen 4, because I just don't think it deserves a dedicated story. But I thought we had to mention it. Outside of that, I just want third-party benchmark.
Yeah.
All right. Let us then move on to the final reader mails. All right. TMC Payton writes in and he says, howdy. The PS5 and Xbox Series X have been out for almost 2 years now. Most games releasing on them still seem to have the PS4 and Xbox One in mind. How long until that isn't the case? How might the current economy factor into these decisions as well? And is Microsoft's different business models and DirectX API driving Xbox's transition to be slower than Sony's? Thanks. I don't know that I can make the argument that Xbox is slower. There's been some upcoming games that aren't on Xbox One I at least I don't feel comfortable saying Xbox has been slower than Sony because if anything, I swear I saw that you could argue the opposite. But I'd say they're similar.
Yeah.
To directly answer your question, TMC Payton, when does this stop? I think we're already seeing this fall games coming out that aren't on last gen, and I think next year's the year where it's like distinctly you truly feel like PS4 is last gen next year.
Yeah, which it's about time. Honestly, like
And I do think the shortages extended this, but I only think they actually extended this 6 to 12 months longer than intended. I think that there were a few games like Resident Evil 8 where it sounded like they didn't initially intend to put it on last gen, but seeing the shortages during the pandemic, they're like, we can make it run at 30 frames. Let's do it.
yeah, it's hard to say. There was also a weirdly big backlash about the transition to new generations this time around, and I wonder if that influenced any of it at all. Probably not, but it was a weird reaction. Like people were surprised that when a new generation came out, that means their old stuff would become outdated.
And I just want to kind of add some texture to this. Like, I know that we made this argument. I heard Sacred Symbols make this argument for a while too. Like the PS5 is outselling PS4 aligned. It didn't due to some some slip ups in shipping earlier this year, but their forecast remains the same. So they clearly expect to have a big second half of this year selling, or should I say last quarter of this year when all the PS5s finally arrive off the boats. So I think they're going to make up for that. My point is, though, you could argue the PS5 is selling at least as well as the PS4, if not better, in aligned sales. So what's the complaints? But at the same time, I think the demand for gaming is bigger than before. So there's still more people that want the best that can't get it. And that's why these companies have decided to have put games on last gen. I know the new gen's selling just as well, if not better than before, but there's just as many people that still want it that haven't gotten it. And that's why they did that. And having said that, I was in a Best Buy the other day, and there's PS5 sitting on the shelf.
Well, maybe the shortage is over. Or
it's not perfect, but guys, I keep seeing people say, when can we expect to get PS5s? Now. During the last Sony drop on their website in the US, the PS5 was in stock for 2 hours. I saw one at a Best Buy. You can get one if you try, guys. You can. Okay. It's not always easy. It's not always at a Target or Best Buy or whatever, but they're there. And if you try hard, I think you can get one now. And you can see it in, I guess the final thing that I want to check before we move on to the next reader mail is I think a good bellwether continues to be if you can get what the scalper prices are right now for the PS5 online. Let me put it to buy it now. You're seeing them for like $650, and that's the digital edition, $700 for the disc. Okay. Yeah, so it's below $800. It's not. Oh, there's a $670 one. Okay. Oh, and then there's a $700 one that even comes with Horizon Forbidden West, and it's the disc version. See, yeah, it's marked up, but it's marked up 20 to 30% now, not 50% like it used to be. And I really think that floor is going to fall through hard. Don't buy from scalpers anymore, guys. You made it this far. Just try to get it. You can, okay? But it takes a little effort, but not nearly as much as it used to. TMC Paint writes, he says, would you wager a PS5 disc version that'll refresh console from Microsoft or Sony released by the end of 2023 or at least 2024? Well, if you're including 2024, absolutely. I would bet whatever you want that one of these companies will refresh something by then. But it also depends what you mean, because we've already talked about how Sony's done 2 revisions to the PS5 for lower weight and better efficiency already. I don't think he means that, though.
That's the type of story, though, where I have to wonder, like, I don't know what it is that's changed over the past decade, but like, would that have made a news story when the PS4 initially came out?
Yes, it did. Yes, I think so. But I remember the PS4 Pro's revision for lower power getting a couple news stories.
That's true. Yeah.
Were they as covered as this? No, I don't think so. I take your point.
It's just, I think people want something to cover with that for some reason.
I'm Patty Cakes writes in, and he says, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on AMD's data center GPUs. Since they're really trying to push for high margins that really seem to be the way to go, look at the insane margins Nvidia is getting for their data center products. But what I've definitely seen is the lack of software support for ROCm and other AMD support technologies for GPU acceleration. Do you think that AMD will need to push harder on the community side to drive adoption for machine learning frameworks and get their tech into devs' hands instead of the typical CUDA that everything high-end revolves around right now? Yeah, look, I think AMD is going to need to put in the effort, making the better software, getting the software supported, paying good sales reps to go to these companies and help them implement the support themselves. And at the same time, I think they're going to do it. Like, I think
Yeah.
we're hearing they're doing it. Like, you can see the software end just in report after report in updates, right? So,
It seems like that's turning around because that's where AMD has been deficient like forever, including with consumer stuff, where it's just like, yeah, you guys have these great CPUs on paper, and you're not working with the OEMs or your clients to actually develop products with them. So,
right. I think AMD now is abundantly aware that they can't just go, but ours is open source and expect everyone to use it. They know though that they're sending the people out. I hear these
yeah.
reports that they're not up there, they're not aligned with Nvidia yet, but they really are putting in the effort. And everything I hear is that RDNA 3 is going to go for it in terms of data center. Do they expect to get to 30-40% data center right away? No. They know it's going to be an upward fight against Nvidia, but they're willing to put in the effort, I think.
Mhm.
Richard and Paul writes in, and he says, "Hey, Tom and Dan, regarding the ongoing Intel GPU debacle, I think that Intel just needs to get these cards out and sold. Do a respin to fix the silicon to prove that they can, and then sell any chips made in a super limited run of just one of the GPUs and focus on Battlemage. The only saving grace that Intel has right now with Alchemist generation is that AMD are focusing the Navi 33 die on laptops, and Nvidia doesn't seem to want to launch the 4050 or 4060 cards until later in the year. They could have 6 to 8 months to sell off all the Alchemist cards and any respins before other chips from Nvidia and AMD and into the market to decimate the Alchemist series." So, Richard and Paul, assuming it's two people who wrote this, because that's what your name suggests. Look, man, this is what Intel's presently trying to do, right? It's like, I think they just need it. This is what them trying looks like.
Yeah. I don't. It's not good, but yeah, like on the one hand, yes, that's what they need to do, but you can't just release a completely broken product.
And maybe he's just saying they better not cancel Alchemist. Well, I mean, I think they're going to sell the 4 million chips they made and they're going to try to do a good job. But yeah, I mean, if we haven't seen it yet, it's because it really isn't ready. So I don't know what
Yeah.
else to say. Carbon Cry writes in, he says, on XE, let's go back to the Intel Alchemist day from 2020. And Carbon Cry has a link here. He says, the talk here is on XeLP, the iGPU of Tiger Lake. Raja Kadori says, we wanted to build a hardware architecture that made it easier for us to leverage integrated graphics software. And then Lisa Pierce, the VP of Graphics Software Engineering, said, we didn't want to just do an incremental change. It was critical to go and build a new driver architecture that's set up not just for XE, but also future generations. And then they have a slide confirming that the driver was built from scratch for DirectX 11 and claims reduced pipeline stalls, API latency, and focus on local memory usage for discrete graphics. And let me see here. Yeah, and they say they built it for DirectX 11. So anyways, he says, either Intel lied to us or they lied to themselves. Please put this out there because in addition to your recent ARC story video, I just want to make it clear how many other attempts there have been by Shrout to bullshit his way out of this one. And yeah, links will be in the description. He says, go to the 50th minute mark for the Intel newsroom video below. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. Some people got mad at the way I phrased some things in my Intel ARC video, and I knew it'd be controversial, but I don't know what to tell you guys. Like, lie after lie here. Intel said they built the driver for DX11 and to make good use of memory in smaller segments. Now they say they need resizable bar and say the architecture is built for resizable bar. I had pictures of Alchemist before AMD before Intel supported resizable bar in their motherboards. And AMD is the one who introduced a resizable bar in 2008. So Intel had all this time to put it on their motherboards and did it until AMD put it smart access memory out. There's no argument Alchemist was built for resizable bar. It clearly wasn't. There's no argument that they always built this for DirectX 12. They didn't. They literally have videos saying we're building this from scratch for DirectX 11. I don't know. I don't need to dwell on this too much. I just want to make it clear. Like that video I put out while I was on vacation, everything Intel's saying to justify Intel's not because it's a forward-facing architecture. They literally don't natively support the latest HDMI guys. Intel is just making this up as they go in interviews.
Yeah, that's all I was going to say. It's like they're clearly just making crap up and doing marketing speak at this point. Like I don't know how to explain this from what was this 2 years ago now, I guess. It's just they're saying what they think they have to say. Like that's the best I can explain it.
Yeah, and again, there were some people that got so mad at me for saying AMD invented resizable bar. Yeah, it was bad phrasing, guys. AMD introduced resizable bar with HP. Sorry, I said invent. I would hope you guys know what I mean, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I was thinking that too when I was editing the video. I was like, oh, I should have said that differently, but there's no way people will obsess over that, right?
Mm.
No way.
No way.
Well, that's it, Dan. I mean, we went through a lot of Zen information and a lot of NVIDIA information as well. Me usually stumbling through half of the sentences like I always do, but hopefully I was legible enough. Do you have any other thoughts? Any other things to bring up from these past 2 weeks of news, Dan?
No, I don't think so.
Well, I don't know. All I can say is I hope you guys... this will probably end up coming out, if I had to guess, like an hour or so later than usual for the free feeds, and probably like half a day late or a day late at most for the Patreon feeds. And I apologize for that, but it also kind of worked out. And it kind of, I mean, because I'll be dropping off when you're listening to this, I will have just dropped off Reese for her next thing of chemotherapy. So I'd actually be getting up early for that treatment anyways to put out the video. So we're basically going to stop recording this, Dan. Gerard's going to wake up in Spain, start editing it. Then I'm going to wake up and post it as early as possible. But it would just have been absurd if we put out a podcast a day after the AMD reveal with no coverage of it. But, you know.
Yeah.
Anyways, remember, though, if you, like I mentioned, if you subscribe to the Moore's Law is Dead Patreon, at the proper tiers, you can get this early and ad-free, and you can, of course, submit reader mails to me and guests. There's that die shrink that's basically a bonus broken silicon, where me and Carbon, Cry contributor to Moore's Law is Dead, discuss all of the big takeaways from Hot Chips. There's a ton of Nintendo Switch 2 discussion. There's a ton of Meteor Lake architecture discussion and stuff. So that's there for you guys if you want that. And subscribe to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel. Subscribe on your podcast, your podcast app of choice. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts so they say we're trending there and other people notice us as well. Tell your friends about us, and otherwise, just be nice to each other, everybody.
Yeah.
Just, I know you're not going to stop putting all caps comments in the YouTube videos, some of you, but what if you put out half as many? That'd be that much less negativity you're putting into the world that you're blaming us for that isn't our fault.
What if you just instead did that thing where you alternate between capital and lowercase letters?
You mean like back and forth, like literally letter to letter, like the bandit speak in Borderlands, which I think is hilarious. Like it's hilarious how in Borderlands they made the let's say mentally insufficient raiders have their speech with like broken English and intermingling capital and uncapital, and we knew to read it in a dumb voice. Funny how that works. But now I'm starting to ramble. I don't know what I'm even talking about anymore. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good week.
Goodbye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, I don't do this alone. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother, Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, and special assistance by Carbon Cry. Find all of our information, including the information of sponsors you can support, at www.mooreslawsdead.com. If you would like to send fan mail or hardware to us, please mail parcels to Moore's Law's Dead at P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. And speaking of fans, patrons are what makes Moore's Law's Dead content possible. The aging business model of spamming ads all over the content is dying. The future of media will be built on fans paying for the content they actually want to exist. And so if you have the extra money, but only if you do, please consider supporting us. For just $2 a month, you get access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to have your questions read aloud on Broken Silicon, Die Shrink, and Loose Ends, and of course, access to the Moore's Law's Dead Discord full of like-minded people who would love to meet you and talk to you about computer hardware. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the entire back catalog of Flyover States podcasts and other projects Moore's Law's Dead has done, and thanks in the credits of videos and other perks as well. And hey, if you can't afford to support us, please do share Moore's Law's Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family on social media, Reddit, and forums. And give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or your preferred podcast app. All of this really does help so much. And if you'd like to advertise on the podcast, hire Tom for consulting, or are a person of interest who would like to be a guest, please reach out to the email address mlhbdead@gmail.com. But as I said, this podcast would not be possible without its patrons supporting it, and so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher producer levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Full, AV, Anthony Gareffa, Greg Pataki, Muhammad Al-Kawari, Brett Jones, Aaron Close, Little Germany, Jan Rauner, Daniel High, Ivan K., Brian Riggleman, Dr. Forbin, Sam Miller, Deke, Thomas Rupp, The Mechanical Philosopher, Terrence Herod, SNES Colmers, Tom Bailey, JT Wanchek, Andrew S., Frank Zielinski, Daniel D., MJB1, Eric Jackson, Justice Brennan, Sammy Good, Valco Malev, The Boss Haas, Nicholas Buckner, Spamtham G. Spamtham, Jonathan, Lord Starstream, General Drips, Blake, Franco Frederic, Matthew Lazier, Jensen Wang, Nathan Mose, Aziris, Gregory S. Acker, Dominique Koch, Jake Dude 23, Jake Martin, Cameron, Caillou Markelli, HardForum.com, Original Ross, Slicky, Stefan, David Cowden, Ricky Tan, Christopher A. Butler, GZ Ziggy, Sarcastru, Stephen Hart, Jason B., Meat and Pork, Stu, Tim Robb, Luis Correa, Ian Clifford, Jesse Jeskowiak, Travis Gooding, Holden Mobley, Nanian, Chris Rich, Deepest Learners, Mads, Zutsu Taylor, Stephen Coates, Michael McGee, Chuck Glidden, Sammy Malays, Greg, Trini, Patrick Groh, Amiable Chief, Brett Summers, Denny Nguyen, Stephen Dick, Tummy, Kunden, Brucha, Mark Mitchell, McDaffie, Domain Peterson, James Anderson, White Trui, Mark Raidmaker, Dave Schultz, 3SBoy08, Hal Buma, Narithiel, Matthew Landavazo, Stefan Koladik, Henry Zhang, Jetson N, Brendan O'Connell, The Grid, Michelle Pell, D31337 Antics, Jason Bowen, Noah Nicoela, Hexapuma, Chrysantine, Jim Foriera, Zabito3, Desist, Thomas A. Teef, Klein Britannian, DNA Tech, 50C Desert, Jean O'Shea, Royce Meyer, Charles Russell, Richard R.E., Morpheus, Teak Autumn, Jackson Miller, JSMMH, Sandy Garrido Saunderson, David Eastland, Cal, Andre Jacques, Gaiman Since Reagan, Jeff Sadler, Jordan Simkovic, Loophole 35, Winstar, Joker, James I. Ratter, Corey Leonard, Nylema, John Shin, Justin Bussell, Kelfin, Austin Haggerty, Roger Davies Shea, Julian Leaked, Corey Chappelle, Evan Dingle, C2, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.